Welcome to a Clawcast special, the Coldcard Mk3 warning and the 562 Bitcoin sweep. We're skipping the usual banter today because we need to lead immediately with a practical, time-sensitive warning.
Yeah, that's really the only place to start. So Coinkite has published a preliminary advisory regarding the Coldcard Mk3.
Right.
And the core warning is basically this. Ordinary on-device seeds that were generated on Mk3 hardware running firmware versions 4.0.1 through 5.0.3, well, they may be at risk.
Okay, so if you are listening to this and you fall into that specific affected cohort, you need to migrate your funds, but calmly. Do not panic.
Exactly. Calmly is the keyword. The official migration path is to generate a completely new seed on an unaffected device.
Right, and verify everything, yeah.
Yes, you have to verify your written backup and the receive address directly on the new device's screen. Then send a small test transaction, confirm it on the blockchain, and only then do you move the remainder of your funds.
Okay, and just to be clear, Coinkite currently says the Mk4, the Q, and the Mk5 are unaffected, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. That is based on their early analysis while the formal technical review continues.
Okay, let's unpack this right away because this situation feels a bit like a product recall on a specific batch of car steering columns.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. If you own that specific make and model from that specific year, you probably shouldn't drive it until you understand the scope. But you also shouldn't look out your window and assume every single car on the road is suddenly going to veer into a ditch.
No, exactly. We need to navigate this entire situation with calm urgency, technical clarity, and frankly, a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah, skepticism is key here. Precision is your best defense against panic. So, to migrate safely, we first have to define exactly what is and isn't included in Coinkite's warning.
Right, and it applies strictly to ordinary on-device Mk3 seed generation within that stated firmware window.
Which was 4.0.1 to 5.0.3.
Correct. So this does not apply to every wallet ever used with the Mk3.
Wait, so if I use my Mk3 just to import a seed that I securely generated somewhere else, am I affected?
No. If you imported a pre-generated seed, or if you generated your seed prior to firmware 4.0.1, you actually fall outside the parameters of this specific preliminary warning.
Oh, okay. That's a really important distinction. It gives us a distinct mechanical action to investigate.
It does. The risk condition is explicitly tied to the on-device generation process during that window.
Okay, but what about the newer models? Because you mentioned Coinkite explicitly lists the Mk4, the Q, and the Mk5 as unaffected.
Right, but we have to remember that this is their preliminary early analysis statement. It's not a final declaration of absolute immunity from a completed technical audit.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm staring at the Mk4 sitting on my desk, what does that actually mean? Can I just, completely ignore this?
Well, you shouldn't panic, but ignoring it is a bad habit in operational security. Early analysis basically means the initial data and code reviews do not show the same risk conditions in the newer hardware architectures.
Right, or their specific firmware paths.
Exactly. But until the investigation formally concludes, that status is subject to change.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about the match that actually lit this powder keg. Because what thrust this advisory into the spotlight was a massive movement of Bitcoin on the blockchain.
Yeah, the chain event, it sent the community into absolute overdrive.
It really did. But we have to strictly separate the verified on-chain reality from the social media rumor mill.
Absolutely essential. So here's the bounded reality. Public chain data verifies that about 562 Bitcoin was consolidated from 341 direct inputs into one single output.
And that output was unspent at the time of retrieval, right?
Right. That is a concrete fact. It establishes a consolidation, and it establishes a time-bounded status.
But, and this is crucial, what that data does not prove is equally important.
Yes. That 562 Bitcoin consolidation does not establish ownership of those funds.
Right.
It doesn't establish the seed provenance, the specific device model used, the firmware, the key acquisition method, or even the root cause of the movement.
It's just a massive footprint, but it doesn't tell us what kind of shoe made it.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it.
And the wider commentary online, like on Twitter, they've been throwing around even bigger numbers. I've seen reports of about 594.5 Bitcoin, 1,324 UTXOs, and roughly 500 transactions.
Yeah, I've seen those too, but we have to explicitly present those figures as reported commentary only.
Why is that?
Because the bounded review only independently reconstructed those 341 direct inputs. It did not independently reconstruct the wider totals.
Oh, I see. So you can't use those larger figures to imply a confirmed victim count or anything like that.
Correct. The causal boundary here is the most critical thing to understand. The Coinkite advisory does not prove that the Mk3 condition caused this consolidation.
Right. Seeing a massive bank withdrawal on the exact same day a vault manufacturer announces a lock defect doesn't actually prove the defect was used to take the funds.
That is spot on. The exact root cause, the affected fraction, the method used to discover the keys, and the sweep causation itself remain entirely unresolved.
So we have to keep other possibilities open. Like, it could have been backup exposure or, I don't know, a sophisticated phishing attack.
Yes. Phishing, supply chain issues, imported or pre-generated seeds being compromised, companion wallet exploits. All of these are still distinct possibilities for that chain event.
But since the advisory does point directly to seed generation, we should probably look under the hood at how the Mk3 actually generates a seed.
Let's do it. So let's break down the mechanics of the ordinary Mk3 random number path.
Keep it accessible for us, please.
I will, I promise.
Yeah.
So to get a 24-word seed, the device requests 256 bits of entropy, which is just raw mathematical randomness, through the hardware's random number path.
Okay, making sense so far.
Then it applies basic health checks to that raw data and uses double hashing before producing the final BIP39 words.
Okay, I want to pause on the hashing part because this is where I think people get confused. If the device applies double hashing to the data, doesn't that scramble it enough to make it secure?
A lot of people think that, but no.
Because I think of hashing like a high-tech blender.
It looks secure, but your blender analogy is actually perfect for explaining why hashing does not fix bad entropy.
Wait, really? How so?
Because hashing is a deterministic process. If you put an apple in, you get apple juice. Every single time.
Oh, okay.
The blender scrambles the data uniformly, but it cannot restore missing randomness. And it definitely cannot make predictable input a secret.
Because an attacker isn't trying to unblend the smoothie, right?
Exactly. They just take all the possible weak inputs, like all possible 4-digit pin ends, blend them all using the exact same algorithm, and see which smoothie matches yours.
Wow, okay. So hashing cannot save you if the initial ingredient lacks entropy. But what about those health checks you mentioned? Shouldn't they catch the bad entropy before it even reaches the blender?
You'd think so, but health checks are not entropy proofs.
What do you mean?
Well, a health check is basically just making sure the chip isn't flatlining. It asks, are you spitting out all zeros? No. Are you repeating the exact same sequence? No. Okay, you pass.
Ah, so it's not asking if the numbers are actually statistically unpredictable.
Right. A chip could be spitting out the equivalent of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not all zeros, so it passes the health check, but it is completely predictable to an attacker.
Yikes. So it could pass a health check while handing you a compromised key. But here's the wild part. Looking at the public source audit, independent coders found no source-level regression in the examined path between firmware 4.0.1 and 5.0.3.
Yeah, that's a massive detail. It means there wasn't some obvious mistake typed into the code updates that broke the random number generator.
So what does that leave us with?
It means that whatever's causing this preliminary advisory remains unsettled. It could be a physical hardware quirk, a build issue, a dependency problem, or some unpublished mechanism.
Which makes this very different from, say, the milk-sad vulnerability from a while back.
Oh, totally different. Milk-sad was a published, reproducible, weak entropy flaw.
Right, and it had a finite candidate set, meaning researchers knew exactly how small the pool of possible keys was, and there were on-chain matches directly linked to losses.
Exactly. But the current Coldcard record has not published an equivalent deterministic flaw. There is no finite candidate space that we know of, no reproducible attack.
The causal story is just completely unproven right now.
It is, but while Coinkite conducts their formal review, independent analysts are putting out time-sensitive commentary that actually conflicts with some of the official preliminary statements.
Yeah, let's bring in James O'Byrne's analysis. He has issued broader warnings, specifically pointing to potential Mk2 risks and even possible Mk4 or Q exposure.
Right, but we need to be explicitly clear for anyone listening. This is conflicting independent commentary. It is not an official correction from Coinkite.
We have to preserve that official boundary. The Mk2 status remains unresolved, and the Mk4 and Q conflict is explicit. Coinkite says they're unaffected based on early analysis, but independent analysts are urging caution.
And then you have the recent BTC sessions commentary, which is a really useful illustration of the urgency here.
Yeah, that was fascinating. It really highlighted the physical entropy aspect and the common mistakes people make during rushed migrations.
It did. But again, we have to be careful. We shouldn't adopt their broader model warnings or their candidate space and compute claims as established facts. The investigation is still ongoing.
Right. So if an independent expert is raising red flags, but the manufacturer says newer models are unaffected based on early analysis, how do you navigate that conflict to protect your funds right now?
You focus on defensive tactics that don't rely on a single point of failure. Things like passphrases, dice-only entropy, and multisig.
Let's start with passphrases, because there is a huge distinction between a BIP39 passphrase and a regular device PIN.
Oh, massive difference. A PN just unlocks the physical plastic device on your desk. A BIP39 passphrase mathematically creates an entirely different wallet.
Right. Coinkite's early analysis describes minimal risk for an affected seed if it's used with a BIP39 passphrase.
Yes, but minimal risk is not zero risk. A strong, unique passphrase raises the work required to find the wallet significantly. But as James O'Byrne pointed out, an affected wallet is only as safe as that passphrase.
I like to think of it like this. Adding a PIN is like putting a padlock on your front door. But a strong BIP39 passphrase is like building a completely different house in a secret location.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, even if they find the blueprint to the first house, the weak seed, they can't find the second house without the passphrase. But that means the passphrase remains secret material that you have to back up exactly.
Precisely. If you lose it, the funds are gone.
Okay, but what if I don't want to trust the device's random number generator at all? Can I bypass it?
Yes, through dice-only entropy. It's a completely separate path. Genuine external dice rolls can provide true physical entropy, but only if the official dedicated procedure is followed.
Right, and the official route, if you're on an empty Mk3 running 4.1.9, is to go to import existing, then select dice rolls, and use at least 99 independent fair rolls.
Exactly. This bypasses the device generator entirely. But I cannot stress this enough. Do not generalize this to every mix workflow. This is not the normal new wallet flow.
And never, ever digitize or photograph those dice rolls. Right?
Never. Keep them completely offline. James O'Byrne also noted this dice roll path is safe when sufficient dice roll entropy is incorporated.
Okay, what about multisig? A lot of people assume multisig is automatically safe.
That's a dangerous assumption. Multisig is entirely construction dependent. It is not automatically safe or automatically unsafe.
It depends on the cosigner seed history, the devices and firmware used, the threshold, and whether one or several potentially affected keys matter to your specific setup.
Right. If you have a 2 of 3 setup, and 2 of those keys were generated on an affected Mk3 without a passphrase, your construction might be fundamentally compromised.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground today. Let's summarize the core takeaways so you are grounded and prepared. The official Coinkite warning is preliminary, but highly actionable for the stated cohort.
Yes, ordinary on-device Mk3 seeds from firmware 4.0.1 to 5.0.3.
And the chain event is real as a bounded consolidation, but it is currently unattributed. The wider figures remain commentary, and the exact causal story is unresolved.
Which means careful, official migration to an unaffected device is the most prudent response. Do it calmly. Test everything with small transactions first.
Right. And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. There is this ongoing tension between convenient black box silicon and purely user-verifiable entropy.
It's the ultimate paradox in hardware wallets.
Yeah. If we can't fully audit the physical, microscopic behavior of hardware random number generators, maybe the ultimate future of true self-custody won't rely on silicon.
What do you mean?
Well, perhaps it will rely entirely on analog physical entropy generation like rolling physical dice that humans can verify with their own eyes.
That is a profound point. We might have to trust the physical world more than the digital one to truly secure our digital assets.
Something to mull over the next time you're setting up a wallet. Stay safe, take your time, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.